Okay, just we'll wait for a few minutes for the speaker to join. Mama, let him join, then only we'll start.
Good evening, everyone.
Good morning, Manish. You are looking very fresh.
Good morning.
Apologies for delay.
Yeah, looking very fresh. Yeah.
Are we ready? Should we start or should we wait for?
Just we'll have an welcome address and then few minutes.
Start recording.
Okay, we'll start now. Greetings and good evening to our participants and good morning to our speaker, Mr. Manish. On behalf of the organizing units, IEEE Computer Society, ACM and Chennai, I extend a warm welcome to Mr. Manish, members and colleagues from organizing units, participants joining the Google Meet meeting, and those watching the webinar through YouTube streaming. In the context of growing adoption of SaaS solutions and using the cloud facilities for the infrastructure to facilitate lower capex by a significant percentage of enterprises across the world, today's webinar topic, Access Explosion on SaaS and Cloud, assumes greater importance. The popularity of SaaS applications and the growth of their associated ecosystems are undeniable. These applications are able to provide users access to their data and workflows on a best-in-class web application from anywhere, anytime, on a wide range of devices, resulting in their widespread adoption. These applications were traditionally used by the users only, but now machine to SaaS communication and SaaS to SaaS communication is also becoming very common. This is giving an explosion of access to personal and corporate data present on these SaaS applications. Most corporations don't have a clear offboarding process, which has made this problem even worse. This discussion of today's meeting will cover the scope of the growing problem and steps individuals and corporates can take to control this problem. With this brief note on the today's topic, let me formally introduce our eminent usage in business. He continues to explore new innovations and trends in this domain. He is currently working as the Director of Engineering at Paloalto Networks and manages a couple of SaaS and data security teams. In the past, he has worked with Netscope and Semantic and have led teams and projects in these domains. Mr. Manish is an alumnus of NIT Trichy with a bachelor's degree in computer science. With these words of introduction, let me request Mr. Manish to enlighten our participants on the topic Access Explosion on SaaS and Cloud. Over to Mr. Manish.
Thanks, Mr. Mohan. And welcome, everyone. So, let me also share my screen so that I can walk you through the content. Just give me 1 minute. Hopefully everybody is able to see my screen.
Yes.
So as we heard, we all saw that popularity of the SaaS applications are increasing at exponential pace, and it's quite reasonable to see why, because when organizations start a business, or when anybody want to do any new work, they don't really want to invest time in building tooling. They want to kind of buy something off the shelf, don't want to invest a lot in it, just use pay as a go model, and want to use best in class tooling because they don't really want tooling to be the reason for their failure, right? Like they want best of class tooling available so that they can kind of use that for their businesses. So that's essentially all of this is what is provided by SaaS applications. You get best in class mails, you get best in class collaboration tool, you get best in class. Who are when we started with this journey roughly 8 to 10 years back, who were the consumer of it, right? The consumer of it were essentially the end user who were supposed to be accessing these applications and were using it. But over a period of time, it was not just the user, it's also the machines which started accessing these SaaS applications. What do we mean by that? What do we mean by that is essentially, um, suppose people started writing, the first probably set of users that started coming, which are non-user, were essentially our automations. The end users which will run the scripts and will probably do something with it, probably upload daily sales data into some kind of a report or some kind of a tooling on the Salesforce, or probably somebody who's doing, let's say, your printers. Your printers are probably accessing a cloud to upload the scan copy somewhere, right? So that's essentially another set of users who started becoming brilliant in the SaaS application. But that is still understandable. Third set of category which started coming pretty recently is essentially the cloud to cloud communication. What do I mean by that is essentially like when you work on let's say your Google Drive, and you want from the Google Drive itself you want to kind of collaborate with somebody, and there is a plugin available which essentially let you Slack within the Google Drive space to your collaborators and say that, okay, these are the content, can you design, these are the designs, can you kind of reuse these designs and probably update something or probably add some content into it. So these are not these are interesting because it allows you to do something more meaningful, add value to your SaaS product without getting out of that product, which means like you can within that console you can do something more on that product. And that's essentially that's referred to as cloud to cloud communication. The reason it is referred to as cloud to cloud communication is when you do that, the traffic doesn't come back to your endpoint. It is a traffic between the Google Drive and the Slack application. So that's what I'm referring to as cloud to cloud communication. So I'm hoping everybody's able to hear it. There is no feedback, so I just please let me know if there is.
No, it is okay.
Yeah. Okay. So that's essentially what I mean by consumer of these SaaS applications. So what is the challenge? The challenge is as this application started to become more and more popular, it gives everybody a flexibility in terms of what they are doing, how they are using these applications. But one challenge which we started seeing is the security started to become a challenge with these applications. The reason which started to becoming a challenge is they're easy to use. Everybody's adopting it, but then this data is not sitting in your data center. This data is sitting in somebody else's data center. For example, when you use Gmail, it is sitting in Google's data center. Whatever mails are being sent, whatever attachments are being there, they are all in Google's data center. Same with when you use Office 365, when you use Dropbox, when you use Salesforce, when you use any of these applications. This is in somebody else's data center, and that is not necessarily a problem, but essentially a concern, because this is your data, this is your company's data, this is your customer's data. So how do you ensure that who is accessing it, from where it is being accessed? What are the compliances that you want to follow are being followed on this data or not? So all the security and compliances which are a reason for, or which are necessity for organization to function, started to become a challenge. So how do you kind of address this problem? We can, for some of the big vendor, probably we can say that, okay, we trust this vendor and we kind of we assume that they will do right things. But for there are tons of vendors out there, and not necessarily everybody is able to take care of everything that we want it to be. So we need tooling, or we need systems which can help us secure our data on this SaaS application, or help us ensure that they are compliant with what we need, right? So, and we don't only need to give this access to our employees. We need to give access to our partners. We need to give access to our contractors whom we onboard on these systems. So that essentially is a challenge, and that's what we mean by the explosion of access. Once we give access to somebody, there is almost no offboarding process that we have seen in most of the organization. The reason is people want to move fast, people want to get their business done quickly, and that essentially means that they don't really realize to come back and kind of remove accesses where it is not necessary, right? So that becomes a challenge. So that's essentially what has been a problem with the SaaS growth. Now, this becomes even more interesting when there is access from machine to machine, or from cloud to cloud, right? Basically, these plugins transfer a large volume of data from your SaaS application to their own cloud, and to do some kind of a to give some additional value to the end user. So essentially, let's say Google, and you put your data into Google Drive or Office 365 or any of the big names. But then somebody install a plugin on that, and that plugin is let's take an example. For example, if you have a Slack, and on the Slack you have a plugin for almost everything that you can think of. You have plugin for Zoom, you have plugin for Google Drive, you have plugin for any other app that you use. It's easy to build a plugin over there and put it there. But what happens to that plugin? That plugin can essentially access data, or probably send notification to all the users who are using your SaaS application. So which means that it has capability to send data or receive data from your SaaS application cloud. That's a challenge, because then we are also responsible for ensuring that that data is protected on those plugin clouds. So first of all, should they be using all this data? Because we don't really want them to use all of our data. We don't really want them to access to all of our data. Second thing is, these plugins might not be as protected as we would like. They might be compromised. They might be using the data for not documented reason, or not essentially intended reason. They might be selling it for the advertisements. So all of these are essentially become a challenge. And another challenge with the plugin and the cloud to cloud communication is, this traffic really doesn't go through our endpoint. It is a direct communication between the two clouds. So there is no way we know what's happening over there. So what does this all results into? This essentially, when we started with the SaaS application, we started with this with its strength, right? Like now we have a cloud application where we can store our data, we can use this data without having to worry about the underlying mechanism of it. It's like driving a car without opening the hood of it, right? Like we don't really need to know underlying mechanism. You can just kind of use this application without really worrying about how they are dealing with this data, or how they are kind of providing this functionality, right? But then when you come to security of it, it's exactly opposite of it. Now you need to worry about what are they doing with this data, who is accessing this data, from where it is being accessed, who is accessing it. Like it's all the thing that provided us the strength to use the SaaS application goes against it to kind of trying to figure out how to use this application more securely, or how to use this how to ensure that we are securing our data, right? So that's essentially increasing worry on the corporate world, on the academy, or anybody else who is using the SaaS applications. And this risk is not a paper risk; it's a real risk. It's essentially we have seen this. So, for example, we saw recent breaches where essentially we found that the organization found that their application was leaking their customer information, and there was big financial impact due to it, because most of the companies have restrictions around leaking their customer information. They were slapped with the penalties. Similarly, we are seeing Zoom, which is a popular conferencing application. We've seen this impact of this problem. If you go further, we have seen this information. We have seen this problem with some of the big names that we have seen, right? So it's because essentially they have the customer information, and how do we ensure that this information is protected in their environment? And if it is not, whenever it is reported, there is a big financial losses. There is a impact to the business, and many times this is not even reported. Many times these are impact that people don't even realize that there is a breach that has happened. So what can we do about it? How do we kind of protect these leaks, right? So again, the way we have managed the security in the world where everything was perimeter, where everything was within the boundary, it has not changed from that a lot. The concepts are similar. How do you kind of apply that concept to the cloud is what has changed, right? So in the perimeter world, we used to have a firewall. All the data was sitting within the firewall boundary, and then anybody who have access to the network was managed. That's not the case anymore. Now the applications are everywhere, users are everywhere, but you still have identity. You still need to kind of authenticate and authorize yourself to this application. So how do you manage access to this application is essentially becoming a central point of control what you can do on these applications. How do you monitor these applications? Residual access, that is a big problem. We'll go into detail of each of this, and then training of awareness. So let's pick up each one. As I said, identity is becoming a central point, which essentially need to which will be using, or which will be the central point of access. So businesses need to drive access policies with justification, which means that before making this data available to anybody, the SAP admin or the SaaS application admin need to think, why do somebody need this application? It need to be, the access need to be granted with the explicit justification. It doesn't need to be allow all policy. It need to be, the policies need to be defined on who need to access to what data. And all the accesses need to have a clear expiry. You cannot have access which is forever. It need to be a very well-defined time window, and then there need to be renewal policy around it on needing basis. We need to have a tooling to monitor who has long-term access, and then probably remove any long-term accesses as much as possible. And then there need to be audit in place to identify who has access, how long he had the access, and then automatic renewal as needed. Second is monitoring tooling. So it's essentially we'll need to identify who did what and for what reasons or from what place, right? The auditing need to be a central piece of our the way we manage our data. And I have given a link in some of these places. So essentially, there are articles that are available that I wrote some time back on how to kind of do this in proper places. I'm not sure if there are ways to kind of share that, but I can. Yeah, we can essentially pass you that as a note probably. But all of this, they are kind of described in detail in some of these articles that are written, right? So how do we kind of, this auditing tool, traditionally SIM has been our go-to tool for any of the auditing use cases. With SIM is powerful tool which essentially help us manage network security or audit network security. But with the rise of the SaaS application, we have seen rise of the CASB, which is Cloud Access Security Monitoring, Cloud Access Security Monitoring tool. So it essentially it is purpose-built auditing tool which can monitor the SaaS applications and provide information on the SaaS applications. We'll go into CASB a little bit more detail, but we can use this tool to be able to kind of audit this information and then log it or provide security on the SaaS applications. Then most of the organizations have started to use the behavior analytics system, which can help us detect anomalies in the uses to be able to identify the suspicious behavior around it, to be able to identify the malicious insider or the compromised account or the data exfiltration use cases on their SaaS applications. Then also there is a need for us to identify what are the data that are sensitive and what is the data that need protection most. So systems or the organizations have started to kind of label their information that, okay, probably my Amazon S3 bucket, this bucket contains the most sensitive information. I need to have more guards and rails around it. Or probably I am not so much worried about, let's say my some storage system which is storing my public feeds, which is okay. I don't need to worry about that a lot. But this is where my IPs are. This is where my code, the source code are, or this is where my business plans are. So I need to kind of protect that with much more resilience, or essentially PIA data is another thing that we need to kind of be very careful about. So we need to kind of store this information. PIA is personally identified information, which is essentially where most of the countries have regulations. And then, of course, we need to have the strong vulnerability and threat management solution to identify we are not running against malwares. We are not having any kind of a known bad attack vectors on these systems. So I briefly touched on CASB, but essentially CASB is a cloud access security broker, which is essentially a system which has evolved in last 8 to 10 years. Along with the evolution of the SaaS application, these are purpose-built solutions which are essentially used to protect customers' SaaS information, right? So these tools are essentially built to provide visibility into SaaS uses. So they essentially are most of these vendors support a wide range of SaaS applications, somewhere between 60K to 100K SaaS applications that are popular. They do this by inspecting the network traffic. Either they sit on the perimeter of the organizations, inspect the network traffic, and from the network traffic, it identifies what SaaS applications are in play, what activities the customer is doing on the SaaS applications. Is this suspicious or it need to be essentially is this activity acceptable or not acceptable from business point of view? Do we need to block it? These tools provide capability to be able to write policies, so you can essentially block the applications which are not allowed or not acceptable from business point of view. So that's essentially the network traffic analysis. Another mechanism of these applications uses is essentially from the by using the APIs exposed by the SaaS application. For example, if you use any of these applications, for example, Google Suite of Application, Microsoft Suite of Application, Dropbox, Salesforce, they all expose APIs. So these APIs with the right token and with the right authentication will be able to provide all the audit and audit of all the activity that has happened on this application. So suppose anybody subscribe to these tools with their credential or with the authentication token, the CASB vendor will be able to use that token, call the SaaS application on your behalf, get audit of all the activity that is performed by your organization or by all the users in your organization, and then analyze it, and we'll be able to present it in the CASB tool. And that essentially will be able to you can use this information to be to get visibility into what's happening, to be able to detect if there is anything malicious, or to be able to put policies if you need to on these applications, right? And then third mechanism that is used by the CASB vendor is essentially using agent or browser-based traffic interceptor to provide visibility. So this is essentially the vendor will provide you a agent which is essentially installed on all the endpoints that is used in your organization, and using that agent you will be able to do the same thing. So these are essentially three different bucket of channels from where you can get the information on the SaaS users and apply policies on top of it. What is the use case for this CASB vendor? Same, it goes back to how do you protect SaaS application. So data security, DLP solutions, which are built on top of these applications are the biggest use case. How do you protect the sensitive data from leaving your SaaS applications, or ensuring that this sensitive data doesn't get into the hand of malicious insider or external attackers. Another use case is the threat protection, which means protecting the known or unknown threat, which means malware, ransomware, viruses are not kind of going in the SaaS applications or coming out of the SaaS applications and impacting your customers. And third is essentially data and access governance, which means like it helps ensure the compliance with regulations around data and SaaS application host, as well as access compliances. So most of the geos has some or other regulations. For example, Europe has GDPR. California has its own privacy regulation. Singapore has its own regulation. India has its own regulation around the data residency, where the data can reside. So, and businesses need to comply with this regulation if they need to do business in these countries. So this tooling will help you ensure that the data that is stored in these applications are being compliant with these regulations, and flag if there is something non-compliant. This is one of the popular CASB vendor solution. Again, there are a lot, but we wanted to pick some so that we can give visibility into what kind of solutions are available. How do they help? And again, this is one of the solutions. You can always look at and browse the web and see many other solutions that are available. But essentially, this is one way. This is this tooling will help you give visibility into what kind of apps are being used in your organization. For example, if you look at this screen, this is one of the tool, and this is available publicly. Like, you can go to the same URL. You will see that this tool, this is the published material from the Paloalto network, where you can look at what the capability of this tooling is. This tool can help you get visibility into what all applications are being used in your organization. This will give you visibility into which users are using it and how many users are using it, how much data is being transacted on these applications. And then it can provide you visibility across industries, across sectors, across type of data, and those kind of things. It can provide you visibility into if there is any sensitive data. For example, here it is providing that that essentially some of the PIA information is available, your social security number, phone number, addresses that are being available, that is stored in these documents, and that might be a violation to the regulation that the US has on the customer data. So the tool can help you provide visibility into what kind of data is there on these applications and how you can prevent, or if there is a exposure risk to this data, or this data is shared outside of the organization or essentially publicly. This tooling can help you detect if there are any malwares on the data that is hosted on the SaaS applications, and essentially if there is a malware, then what kind of capability this malware has. So similar to the SaaS application, again, the cloud compute, that's a big field on its own, and probably we'll need another 1 hour for kind of going deep into it. But essentially, just to touch on how does this impact on, how does this have impact on public cloud and public compute engines? The tooling that is available from, again, multiple vendors help you get visibility into building inventory of those assets to identify what all information or what all applications are running on this SaaS application, on this cloud compute engines, what kind of data is available there, manage the configuration of all these cloud applications centrally, without going into individual cloud provider. Looking at it centrally and being able to manage it. Suppose you're using 3-4 vendors, or you have a hybrid environment where you have some of the public cloud, you have some of your own data center. How do you kind of manage configuration of it centrally? It provides an investigation platform. What do I mean by that is it provides a visibility into what all activity that has happened, a time series view of it, provide capability to slice and dice this data in terms of putting right filters, putting certain conditions, and then distilling the information to get you like those 10 records or 10 activities that your security admin is most interested in, and also have the capability to be able to flag which one is seeing suspicious, which one is seeing malicious, right? And it provides compliance monitoring tool, and most of these big compute engines use the use infrastructure as a code method to be able to manage their cloud environment. So scanning of that code to be able to identify some these all infrastructure is as desired versus introduced by some malicious attacker or malicious insider, and then automatic remediation capabilities on this cloud application. Right. Um, again, and what does this result into? This result into providing data security on the public cloud. So get complete visibility into your data and the classification of data. Help us prevent any malware being run, malware or crypto mining tool or any other malicious uses of our compute resources on this cloud environment, and help ensure that our data is not exposed to unintended user. So those tooling will help provide exposure information of the data. The second big thing that we picked up on how to prevent data leakage on the SaaS application and public cloud is access problems. So one of the biggest threat vector that we have seen over the period of time is the residual access, which means that we started a business, any business for that matter, but let's pick up an example. It's essentially, let's say it's a small firm, small law firm. We said that we don't want to invest a lot in tooling. Let's get the best in class tooling. So we bought subscription to, let's say, anyone, Google or Microsoft Office space, so that we get all of our document processing capability, email capability, collaboration capability. And then we started saying, okay, what do we do? Like we hired a couple of employees, we had customers, so we started giving access to certain information to them so that they can do their work, right? For example, customer can provide their information or their documentation that they need us to work on. Employees can use this, access this information and be able to do their work, right? The challenge is this is all good till this point of time, but as soon as we say that, okay, some employees left the company, some customer moved on, and then we realize that there is no process to kind of, or at least it's very convoluted to identify that who has left, remove access to them. When you need something, that time it's easier to kind of go and provide information, but when people leave or when essentially this is no more needed, then there is almost nowhere there is a process to kind of say that, okay, now essentially remove these permissions, right? Or this customer is no more using this information, go and revoke access to this particular folder. So residual access is one of the biggest attack vector. So we need to be able to provide, we need to have a process and tooling to be able to remove the permissions which are no more in use. So whatever permissions that we provided for a specific reason, and if it is not valid anymore, then we need to provide a cleanup capability. How do we achieve this? The best way to achieve this is have some way of access expiry. No access should be granted for permanent basis. It should be, let's say, you go very aggressive and do it every quarter, or probably pick the frequency which suits the business. But essentially, there should be a way in which we revoke the accesses and then re-grant it as on a need basis. And of course, it is challenging. It's not easy to do because it disrupts the business. You revoke access, somebody is not able to do the work. And that has impact, that has financial impact. So which means that it need to be seamless. It need to be done in a way that that the that revoking access, looking for a workflow which can essentially enable access with the right approvals in a seamless fashion is the tooling that is needed for us to be able to do this effectively. And then auditing is essentially central piece for any of the security word, where you will need to get information on who accessed what and when. That will help us with the investigation. And then, of course, as these systems are becoming more and more popular, there is a need for us to be able to provide this awareness and training to our employees, to our customers, and to almost everybody to essentially be aware of security. Security is essentially the weakest link will cause the breakage into your information. If you have hundreds of employees or thousands of employees, it just need few of them uh, to be to be um, to be not conscious of it, or to either intentional or unintentional. Essentially, if few of them breaks that link, then your information is available. Like, they can cause the information to be available to anybody to outside of your organization, and that essentially becomes a problem. So having that awareness and um, awareness about the security protocols, the mandate on the security is important. It needs regular training. Most of the organizations have processes to get awareness about this information, and need employees to take regular training around this. And another big attack vector is the phishing. So we all have seen those emails where people are kind of promised, or people are kind of lured to some of the gains to trick them into giving the information, and that essentially causes that is one of the biggest attack vector in terms of the external attackers to provide this information. Phishing is one of the biggest tool that attackers have been using to kind of gather information, or to be able to breach the customers, breach the organizations, and that essentially need to be handled through training and tooling. So probably a lot to cover, but essentially the way to think about it is it's a very useful concept in the whole of the computer engine. SaaS has come a long way, and it has become way of life for most of the people around the world. It is a highly productive and cost effective way to use the services and applications. It essentially increases collaborations and accessibility. However, there are security challenges or there are security needs that still need to be addressed. So you need to balance the usability of it with securing your and your customers' data. So you need to have guardrail in place while allowing people to use this information, um, um, in a collaborative fashion, in a fast fashion, right? So the productivity and the accessibility need to be balanced with the need for the security. We need to have controls in place to ensure that this data is not getting into the hand of getting into the hand of undesirable user or undesirable consumer, and protect organization data as well as the customer's data. Uh, so the transfer and storage of sensitive data need to be controlled. And how we can do this? We can use the toolings that are available. SIM, CASB are a great tool which can essentially help us get visibility, help us with the detections, and help us with the controls that we want to in place. AI it has been there from some time, but it has started to become mainstream where almost all the tooling are using AI to be able to help us get visibility around the information, help us detect the anomalies and the attack vectors, essentially help us enhance the capability of this tooling to be able to kind of help with this information. So that's essentially the most of the information that I wanted to share. We can open up for questions, and and I know this is probably a lot of information in probably a small period of time. So I can either provide links separately, or I can like look at the CASB and SIM solutions that are available and see how it helps you to kind of use this information for your organization, for your education or business needs. So with this, I'll open up for questions.
Yeah. Dr. Akila, shall I continue?
Yes, Dr. Gomati, you can just.
Yeah, ma'am. Yeah. This is Dr. Gomati presenting the questions which have been posted during the registration. Mr. Felix Aro Kiraj, as a faculty, he's raised some 3 different questions in different perspectives. So I'll put it one after the other. What influence do large language models, LLAM, on cloud computing?
So LLM has impacted almost any kind of technology or any LLM has an impact on almost everything that people are doing, and security is no different. So, like many other areas and technologies, it has an impact on security, the way we secure our data. It makes it easier for us to scrape the information. It makes it cheaper for us to kind of do this in a manageable way. So, for example, if you need to access a certain set of sensitive information or certain set of compliance information, rather than doing it by a human, or rather than doing it by a purpose-built tooling, LLM is a generic technology which can essentially scrape this information and provide this information in a pretty cost-effective way and in a pretty fast way. So that has definitely has implication on security, which means that you can employ LLM models into the security world to be able to get this information quickly and more effectively. And another thing is, previously it was almost unthinkable to be able to provide all kind of variables in a first. Computing this variable were costly, and second, presenting this information was also costly because you have to build the workflow for each one of these data points. Now it's with the help of LLM, it has become pretty easy because it's transactional now. Now essentially, because you don't need to build a specific workflow, you can use LLM to be able to provide this information easily.
Thank you, Mr. Manish. The second aspect of his questionnaire is what are the cost of Saas and data centers in a sustainable environment?
Correct. So the cost of SaaS is pretty varied. Like it can go from few hundreds to few $1 million based on what is the use case and what is your compute size, right? The most of this cloud provider charges or probably bill customer based on how much compute they are using, how much network they are using, and essentially the third vector is how much data they are using, right? So these are the 3 vectors that SaaS application builds clients on. So the application can be as small as probably providing some information about the organization to the managing whole inventory of the workflow and building the tooling to kind of do the whole business on the SaaS application. So it's a pretty varied cost.
It's a sustainable environment. Does it have an implication on the time or the period duration? How many years we should plan for it?
So businesses plans for almost like a business. Most of the businesses plan for a year and then have an eye on next 3 to 5 years. I think that's what you should be looking at on what it will cost me today and what is the implication for next 5 years. And then if you manage that on ongoing basis, that's essentially what will give us edge in terms of what it means.
Okay. The third question, what he posted by Felix faculty, how misinformation and disinformation can be mitigated at the Saas level?
So
Shall I repeat again? How misinformation and disinformation can be mitigated at the Saas level?
correct. So misinformation and disinformation is handled by the application which is running as a SaaS application. The application can decide how it harvests information and share information with its user. So the tooling is built to fact check, like depending on what kind of SaaS application it is, the tooling will be there which will help us check whether the information is accurate or not. For example, if it is a social media feed, then the social media feed will need to have a way to check whether this is a news, this is a real news, this is not a real news. If it is a YouTube kind of site, or if this is if this is something, if it is a bank, they will probably have a different way to check. They will essentially be very guarded. They'll provide the information that is in their system, right? So it's on the application to application basis on how they handle the information. The good news is with the technological advancement, there are enough tooling available for us to be able to do this effectively. For example, if it is news feed, or if it is a video streaming site, there are toolings available which can detect the abnormality in the feed stream in the videos to be able to identify whether it is manipulated versus it is kind of a real video. So the toolings are available. It's up to the SaaS application it honors its own SaaS application to be able to employ this tooling and kind of flag the content which is essentially not real or probably misinformation, right? So far, governments are not mandating the platforms or SaaS applications to flag this, but now I think with the amount of misinformation, disinformation we have seen on these tools, and now government have started to kind of put this controls or put this mandate on the SaaS applications.
Okay, thank you. Next, a professional, Parveen Qureshi, is asked about some, links for library access or something, some topic.
So essentially, if I understand the question,
Some
the question really
for accessing. How do I enhance my?
So if I understand right, the question really is like, what kind of libraries are available for me to be able to build a good SaaS applications?
Yes. That's it.
So essentially, most of these cloud providers, for example, AWS, GCP, Google Cloud Platform, Azure, they essentially have a rich set of plugins or tools which can help enhance the SaaS uses. What do I mean by that? That is, like, for example, if you go to AWS, there'll be tooling to kind of have, let's say, auditing tool, which can essentially kind of provide you visibility into what is happening. They will have tooling for messaging system, like how do you kind of send messages between the different ecosystem. So best place is to first look at what kind of what cloud compute environment you want to use, and then look at what component they provide in-house, right? So that you can essentially use that effectively. Also, most of these compute engines are now built using the microservices. So you can use the Kubernetes, you can use the containers to be able to build this tooling effectively. It's very specific to the specific environment or a specific technologies that you use for building your application. But the good news is each of these applications, each of these environment have a good set of documentation to be able to get good libraries.
Yeah, thank you. Faculty, Mr. Gopinath has asked, what could be the future of cloud computing in terms of or in spite of access explosion? I think that is a That's what you wanted to know.
Correct. Correct. So essentially, the future of cloud computing is essentially how do you make it more cost effective? How do you make it more accessible? How do you make it more functional, right? So that's essentially, with each passing day, we see that these vendors are providing new capabilities, making it more cost effective and making it more accessible. So in my view, the future of the cloud computing is around essentially making it more mainstream than it was before. And I do believe that in future probably nobody will need to, or probably I don't think multi-cloud is going anywhere. There will always be a need for private data center, but more and more of it, as much as possible, people want to move to public cloud because it gives them scale, it gives them the agility in terms of how fast they can build the application, and it gives them the cost advantage in terms of pay for only the portion that they're using, and scale up, scale down as much as needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. And another faculty, Mr. Nagarajan, has asked how to use a chat GPT on the Saas technology. I think that's what his question meant.
Yeah, so ChatGPT is one of the first and most popular LLM model. So essentially, it has revolutionized various industries, including customer services, education, mental health treatment, personal health, productivity, and content creation. In each of these areas, ChatGPT and natural language generators can understand the capability to help improve efficiency, accuracy, and outcome. So it has impacted almost every industry, every businesses that we have seen. And same is with the security. So with security, this can help us get insights pretty easily, pretty quickly, and on a scale of data. So it can essentially help you get. Suppose you are asking a question. Suppose you want to get information around how to configure something. In the old world, you will have to probably look at a couple of documents and see it, versus ChatGPT can give you very specific pointed instruction pretty easily. It is becoming better. Of course, there are other outcomes. There is hallucination. There is some of the shortfalls, but over the period of time, it is going to become even stronger and probably become mainstream.
Thank you, Mr. Manish. I think that is it. So currently there was no questions from interactive section. There was no questions. It was very, very inspiring to listen to you during the question and answers. Also, you're giving a very elaborative answers. Thank you so much. So over to Mythili ma'am.
Yes. Thanks, Dr. Gomati. Thanks, Mr. Manish, for starting this day with us. Thank you so much. We have covered almost all the topics related to SaaS issues with access from machine to machine and cloud to machine to cloud to cloud, challenges in using SaaS application, measure to protect and prevent data leaks, and also about CASB, CASB tools. And more than that, you have given the very elaborate answer, as she mentioned, which covers little more knowledge and information about SaaS. Thanks for the participants who makes this event successful and very effective. Thanks for the interaction through questions also. And I also wish to thank the Joining Society, IEEE Madras and ACM. And special thanks as usual to Mr. H.R. Mohan sir, who is very vibrant and bring us more webinars like this and very efficient speakers with us. Thank you so much. Have a nice weekend, Mr. Manish.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks thanks everybody for joining in, and looking forward for more collaborations.
Thank you, Manish. So, presentation.
Nice.
everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.